Hello, friends. Well, I've gone back to outer space on my wife's suggestion. She she prefers it to me loafing about on the beach, apparently. So fair enough. All right. So uh, first of all, let's share the screen from where we left off because this is part two. Let me see. Share screen. That's it. All right. So we left off here um, last time. The Tung Yu Miao. So we are carrying on from June the 22nd, Sunday, June the 22nd. There's not much left, actually. Um, all right, so uh, of the Peking diaries, that is. All right, Sunday, June the 22nd, had occasion to lick my boy. In the morning, he had asked me whether he could go to Li Pai, and upon my refusing, he went to Jameson and asked him, who said that it depended on me. I refused 3 times, and yet he went. When he came back, after some equivocation on his part and reiteration of his former statement that it was a grand day, I kicked him downstairs with 2 good kicks, which made him turn around in a crying rage and say, "Wo pu kensu." That is, I suppose, I won't be your servant. Of course, he subsided. Monday, June the 23rd, my week in the office. Tuesday, June the 24th, riding out before breakfast, we went outside the Anting Men, and Beatty, going at full speed, had a fine spill in a puddle of mud, at least a foot deep. His horse fell on one side, and both were covered with mud. The horse especially had hardly a clean place, not even excepting his head, and his tail was like a bundle of weeds hauled out of the river mud. The Chinaman thought it a great lark. We went a little outside the old wall and then turned back, coming out upon the plain just east of the temples. We then made for the Teishing Men, passing through what appeared to be a lot of soldiers under review. On the top of the mound were some tents, probably of the generals. We thundered along at full speed, but Mr. Bruce, who was driving that way, was turned back a little before we were there. Just a moment. Okay, sorry. Uh, Turn on the air conditioning. Right. On Monday, I remarked to St. John, without any intentions, that Medhurst copied all his drafts into a register, which St. John, on telling to Bruce, produced a circular of which we had to write 13 copies between us. Last Sunday, I finished Undine, and I am now again trying the Nibelungenlied, which seems easier than it used. I am also reading Hamilton's lectures on metaphysics and the Fairy Queen, which I mean to get through this time, if possible. Very widely read for a young man. Friday, June the 27th. This morning, 10 of us on horseback and Murray in a cart with 3 other carts containing boys and grooms started at 5 o'clock for Pi Yun Se, or the Jasper Cloud Monastery situated in the hills, miles from the Ping Chi Men in a blank direction. 2 blanks there. The road led us through Pali Chuang and about a mile beyond turns off by the side of an almost dry stream, flanked on one side by a continuous mound. After proceeding along this for some distance, the road divided into two, a bridge affording to one branch the means of crossing the stream bed, while the other still continued along the bank. Taking the left over the bridge, we got into rather a bad road, but still cantered on, passing through a village till we came to a shaded enclosure. There are the footnotes. With tombs and memorial tablets. Here we waited for the carts, and when they arrived, turned to the north. Up to this time, I had fancied that we were going to Patah-kew, but from the slight knowledge I had gained from the map, I soon perceived myself to be mistaken. Mr. Bruce having rented the temple at Patah-kew, I sent things up there. We did not consider that we had any right to intrude there, and so the destination of our excursion was changed. Riding on and on, at last we came to a spur of the mountains over which we had to lead our horses. Horses spelt wrong. The view from the top included Yuen Ming Wen, the White Pagoda, and close in front, the white marble monuments at the top of Pi Yun Su. In one recess, and a tall pagoda which seemed to have been painted green in another. We passed through a long enclosure with a great wall in front, extending far up the hill and full of houses. At first we wanted to put up our horses here, but on learning that there were stables at the monastery, we changed our minds and descended again. A road paved with cobblestones led us up to the gate, where we delivered the beasts into the hands of small boys and sat down to eat apricots and tart cherries, for which entertainment we paid only a few cash. A great number of butterflies with white wings and tails of a gauzy texture were flying about, and I speedily secured 4. I saw some large yellow butterflies resembling swallowtails, Papilio machaon, or macaon, I'm not sure, but I cannot be sure and did not catch any. I also caught 2 of a brownish kind, something like wood ringlets, but both were broken by the jolting in coming home. Of another swallowtail kind, one was also spoilt in the cart. Near Palichuang, I saw some fritillaries, but could not catch any, as I was without my net at the time. A priest guided us through some mazes into a room where we washed and breakfasted on victuals and off utensils brought by ourselves. After eating, I made an excursion and went up to the top of the place by numerous flights of steps and through many courts. This top building is of white marble, and on the platform are 7 Lama monuments. In one of these is a goddess with 11 heads, one above the other in threes. The figure has 8 hands, but how these are divided among the 3 bodies of the idol, I can't imagine. Directly behind us is the bed of a mountain stream and a path leading past a building which I could not well distinguish. Over the hill, right and left, nothing showed itself but the hills, and straight in front lay the plain extending up to Peking, the walls of which lay in a mist. The Palichuan Pagoda was a landmark. A little to the left of the front, the white pagoda west of the Minghu was prominent, and beyond it in the distance I could just distinguish the palace on the top of the hill north of the lake. In one of the temples leading up to this place were thousands of gods, all of the same size and pattern, arranged around the south and north ends in rows, one above the other, all made of wood and gilded. And there's the footnotes. Lama spelt 2 ways. Minghu is a lake. Badachu, cluster of 8 temples, where the British legation passed most of the summer to avoid the heat of the city. Okay, let's continue. In front of this were palms, rhododendrons, pomegranates, and a large pink water lily in pots. The finest part was a large hall with a 4-sided roof, that is, without gables. Inside, row within row, were gilded wooden gods of life size, sitting and holding varieties of articles in their hands. Of these there are just 500. In the centre was a shrine with 3 gods, and one stood at the end of each of the 4 avenues leading to the centre. That one guarding the door might well be considered a good representation of a demon. Inside buildings, the tortures of hell and bliss of heaven were represented by means of plaster figures. In the former, the punishments were very horrible. Men are hung up by their feet or by the tail to have the head cut off, and a man and woman taken in adultery were undergoing the same death. Others were impaled on sharp rocks and transfixed on spears, while some were undergoing the process of disemboweling. The creatures engaged in this work had the faces of cats and wolves, and were of gigantic stature in comparison with their victims, whose dissevered bodies and limbs lay scattered in all directions. The joys of heaven, being of a less varied character, are more difficult to portray, and were represented for the most part by persons walking about with joyful countenances and offering prayers in small temples. Beneath their feet a stream appeared to carry the wicked to the lower regions. All the buildings seemed to be kept in very good order and to have been built of the best materials. Some parts are prettily laid out with the easily formed rockwork through which tiny streams meandered. Here I contrived to get some ferns which I carried home in my pocket handkerchief, though it is rather doubtful whether they will live. The whole building is higher than the gorge in which it is situated, and a chasm, crossed by a stone bridge, separates it from the lower courtyard in which our horses were left. I think we started about 3 or half past during the return journey. 3 or half past. During the return journey, I and Gardner changed steeds, and I never had a more comfortable seat in my life. After letting down the stirrups, I had no hold, the saddle being so small that my knees projected right over the front of it, even when I sat right on the back. However, I had a glorious gallop. At Palishuang, I again mounted my own horse. I went out with Stronach, Jones, and Thompson. When we were nearing the gate, all of a sudden my horse fell during a canter, and I went over his head. Both of us, I think, getting a good dust bath. Stronach and I got to the legation by 6 o'clock, being first in by 15 minutes, and so ended a very pleasant excursion. The handwritten diaries are very hard to read at times, and I can quite well understand why there are some apparent mistakes in here. Monday, June the 30th. I am 19 years old today. What a frightful age. Rode out with Jones from the Xipianmen and came to another extinct lake between that road and the causeway leading to Luko Chiao. It did not seem to be so large as that between the Xipianmen and Palichuang, nor in such a state of cultivation. Saw several good butterflies and got down to chase one, and just as I was going to catch it, Jones' horse and mine began to fight, and so I had to go and separate them. Mine is a very devil for kicking in the stables. This morning he broke his shackles and then the cope, which was used to supply their place. He has kicked down 2 of the partition walls in a very short space of time. July the 1st, got the rest of my quarter's pay and discharged my debts, leaving last month's mess bill still unpaid. Wen Xian Sheng's brother came today in the afternoon to teach me Manchu. His name is Wen Yushan, and his age, 23, rather a young-looking man for his years. About 7 o'clock, we had a violent storm of wind, rain, and thunder, the 2 former ingredients being worse than I had ever known. It departed as suddenly as it came, about 8 o'clock, leaving the quad in a most awful state of puddle. We have altered our dinner hour to 8 now because of the heats preventing us going out before 5. I can't say I like the arrangement. July 3rd, or Thursday. Last night, the 4 Roman Catholic boys went to Milne and told him they wanted to leave without assigning any particular reason, and Milne told them it was very foolish and said they had better stay. This morning, Teishin comes up and says, I want to leave, and being asked his reason, said that his mother was ill and that he would come back after he had been to see her. Another reason was that I had refused him permission to go to Li Pai. This is his servant here. I called him up, and he made the same contradictory sort of excuses, and I said that I did not believe the tale about his mother. Meanwhile, the other 3 Roman Catholics had also said the same to their masters, and coolly remarked that it might seem odd that they should have heard of their friends' illnesses on the same day, and they thought it odd themselves, but nevertheless it was true. Feng Ming in particular said he had received the news and had gone to ask another of the boys if he knew of a substitute, or would be one himself. And this boy said he must also go out as he had the like news, and so on to the 4th. I had a great struggle with my boy, having told him to wait till the morrow, while he declared his determination to go at once, and Milne, instead of helping me, stuck up for the boy, so that I was compelled to let him go before he did so. I made him turn out his things out, sick, as if I suspected him of stealing, so he went like a fool, though I believe he did not want to. July 4th, Friday, got up very early and rode along the south side of the Tung Chau Canal for several miles, desiring to find a bridge which exists there according to the Russian map. Unfortunately, it appears to have been a mistake. On our way, we stampeded a man on a donkey, and the beast running away threw him to the ground, and then trotted away after us for nearly half a mile, while the unfortunate man ran after it with loud cries. At last a man stopped and restored it to him. Murray's coolie brought a respectable-looking boy this morning, named Ho Chai, and 22 years of age, was formerly a watchmaker in Mark Lane. Took him, although a Roman Catholic, and he seems a good servant. Teishin came back today and wanted to be gardener's boy, saying that he had not. There's a note about Manchu there. He had not desired to leave, but that Mattia had led him on. That party was also seen hovering about the place, but I don't know whether he made any advances towards asking permission to come back. I hear today that we shall return to Japan in any case when the dispatches come from Yokohama. I most sincerely hope not. So did he want to stay in China at this point? Sunday, July 20th. During the last fortnight, we have had frequent showers of rain and thunderstorms, which relieve us a good deal from the heat. I have made a new arrangement of my lessons, taking Chinese from 7 to 11 a.m., 12 to 3 study of Manchu and English, etc., 3.5 to 5.5 Manchu teacher, 5.5 to dinner ride. That would be 3:30, I suppose, to 5:30 and 5:30 to dinner ride. After dinner, German and English wrote letters today. Cholera or something like it is killing hundreds daily. It came up from Tinqing to Tungchao and then spread to this city. It has not been here for the last 4 years. It is cured by acupuncture. My teacher had pains in the belly, and so he took a cash, dipped it in water, and scratched himself. By that means, as he supposed, he got all right again. Saturday, July 27th, Gardner was taken ill with cholera and continued to be very ill the whole of that day and the next. In the evening of Sunday, he was pronounced out of danger, though at one time it had been very doubtful whether he would get through it. We all took turns in watching and giving him his medicine. Nibelungenlied finished. Finished, surely ED there. 29th of July, Monday, Wyndham returned from leave, bringing letters from Colonel Neil to Milne, in which he said that he was loath to disturb arrangements made by his predecessors, but that Milne must report to Wade on the subject, which Milne did so strongly that Wade, coming down next day, gave orders that we should get ready to be off on Thursday week by the next mail. It is a great bore, for we shall neither go into the country nor take a trip to the wall, the Great Wall of China, I suppose, besides missing a very pleasant winter. So he really didn't want to leave China at this point. August the 6th, Wednesday, we sold our furniture to Shereshevsky and Dr. Williams at cost price, and horses too. Burden took mine at $30, though I might have sold to Williams at $40, but what is $10? I should doubtless have wasted it in something, on something. All but Beatty accompanied us, and the fellows who did were kind enough to mount us by turns. Alan lent me his horse. Our train consisted of 14 carts, and of which was occupied by our old mess servant and our boy Ho-chai, and one of which perhaps, who had expressed a great desire to accompany us to Tientsin. We started at 18 minutes past 5. The roads were very muddy owing to rain, which had fallen during the night, but the sun coming out at 8 of the clock presently dried up all the water. We parted from our friends about 7 and journeyed for an hour to that's 208 Qianjiayuan, where the carters breakfasted. At Changjiawan, we took tiffin, having been provided with food by Mrs. Reynolds. She even gave us a dozen pints of ale. We travelled all day till late in the evening and arrived at Hosiwu, where we were put into a set of stinking rooms, before the windows of which a lot of mules were stabled for the night. The rooms themselves smelt like fermented horse stalls. However, after a scanty meal at which I was obliged to use chopsticks, we managed to construct sleeping nests on the Kang, and there we rested till 4 in the morning of August the 7th, when we again addressed ourselves to our journey, which turned out to be a dirty one, as dirty a one as that of the day before had been fine and dry. After some hours of jolting. After some hours of jolting, we got to Yangtsun, where we tiffined with the full intention of getting to Tientsin that same evening. So on we went, sometimes close to the bank of the river, and directly afterwards buried in the tall millet and maize which cover the whole of the country through which our road lay. I greatly enraged my driver by sitting on the wrong side of the cart in order to escape the heat of the sun and the rope by which the second mule is harnessed. At last he stopped and refused to go on, whereupon I called him a wangpa kaotsu, or sow of a cuttlefish, as some say. Others, the sow of one who is unmindful of everything. That is cursing people, was his angry reply. 213. Jege shimaren. Again, I said it. Nihai maren. You're still cursing. So I explained to him that I felt it my duty to curse people who refused to do as they should, and he then proceeded. On arriving at Tientsin, we found that Mongon and Goddard had gone down to their boat, the Arethusa, while Douglas, that's Robert Kenaway Douglas, was at Taku for his health. J.A.T. Meadows, he was an interpreter at the British consulate in Ningpo who married a Chinese woman. See PD Coates, China consuls. J.A.T. Meadows, who lives close by and who was well known to Robertson, was also out of the way, and our only resource was to take possession of the consulate and order dinner. We then went to Lane and Crawford's, and actually this is explained, I was wrong about it earlier. Started by two Scots in 1850, Lane and Crawford catered to the shopping needs of Westerners. The company is still going and is now a chain of luxury stores in China. Goodness. We then went to Lane and Crawford's to order our bills, and coming back we met the consul. I had thought Lane and Crawford's was a UK company, but firm, but appears not. The consul. It looks from this as if Mongan and the consul were two different people. But Mongan was consul in Tientsin at the time. We met the consul, who took our proceedings very easily and ordered everything to be supplied to us that we could want. We stopped in Tientsin till Sunday morning, although we had intended to start the day before. But the rascally boatmen did not bring their craft before dark. It was large and roomy, containing behind all the family of the owner, then a small room with a kang, a stove, in which I slept, and where we fed, and the others slept, and one for the two boys who stopped with us until we left Taku. This vessel was navigated with a sail, paddles, and tugmen. It had a small oblong boat astern, into which I got once, and from inexperience in that kind of rowing was soon left behind, but was saved by a boy belonging to the crew, who soon ran her up to the big boat again. We were 22 hours on our journeying, which terminated at 8 o'clock on the morning of Monday, August the 11th. Rode from Peking to Tientsin. Here we stopped with Gibson for a week and found him a first-rate fellow indeed. He has a good deal of trouble with the residents there, especially with one Mellor, formerly a gold digger in Australia, who, for a mere fancied insult to his companion, brutally assaulted an old fellow of 60, for which he got a week's imprisonment on low diet. He was let out the day after our arrival and immediately went off to Tientsin, and there told the most infamous lies of Gibson, as that he was not permitted to go out to ease himself, and that the consul came every day and asked him derisively how he liked it, with others of the same nature. About 1,100 Chinese were going through a course of European drill at the time, and we took the opportunity of going to see them one day. Chun Ta Lao Ye, in Pinyin, Da Lao Ye, used for someone of high social status, was present. And Robertson and I took advantage of his dismounting to take a ride on his ponies. We were soon lost to sight among the graves. Poor Chun was in a bad state, his belly was unwell, and he asked Gibson, "When do you think they will come back?" "Oh, it is quite impossible to say. They are young fellows and like a bit of fun." When we did return, the ponies were in a frightful state of sweat, so we dismounted. We did the same the day before at the trial of a new wrought iron 18-pounder made at Tientsin. They were evidently very much frightened at the idea of letting off such a contrivance of their own, and retired several feet away after lighting a slow match. Happily no damage was done, but Gibson advised them to make no more, as they could import better and cheaper ones from England. A man named Hodder used to come every night, an ill-educated custom-house agent who was formerly a sailor. From him we learnt the following recipe for making a cooling drink: half a glass of brandy, half orange bitters, 2 teaspoonfuls ginger syrup, put in tumbler and fill up with water, then shake in the proper vessel till quite milky and drink it off at once. We tried to get passages on board the Ringdove, but they had been bespoken by Clements, who designed our quarters at Peking, Johnson of the Commissariat, and Douglas. The two officers got on board a junk but were too late, and Craigie sailed without them. So they returned, and on Saturday took boat up to Tientsin in order to board the SATOW. Luckily they missed her, how I don't know. We embarked on Monday afternoon and left next day at 8 o'clock. I was seedy all the way to Chifu, where we arrived next day at 11 a.m. and found the Ringdove lying in harbour. The mails were transferred to us, and brought on board by Richardson of the Imperieuse, Robertson and I went on shore to buy silk and to get a meal at the consulate, both of which we accomplished. We saw the consul, who is a little lobster-like, nervous man who seemed to be afraid of us. What a wonderful idea, lobster-like. Afterwards, we saw Howlett, who is also small and red-faced. Full of meat and tranquil, we returned to the ship. Besides ourselves, the passengers were Don Guimarães, a secretary, Don Gonsalves, and 2 attachés. Brand, head of Smith, Kennedy and Company, and that beast Henderson, whom I afterwards saw at Shanghai and who spread reports about concerning Gibson, which I had the pleasure of contradicting at Lindsay and Company's table. Sunday, August the 24th, arrived at Shanghai and got a room for 2 nights, after which we cleared off to the Busters. Is that Alabaster? I'm not sure. And lay down our mattresses. Robertson stopped at the hotel with a friend named Mingies of Illegible. I called on Mrs. Lay and found her an insipid sort of affected girl, not unlike Ellen Weedon. I was glad to get away. Next day, Jameson and I dined there, and she was not present. Lay is a pasty-faced little wretch, about 3 cheese high, with square shoulders. His face is adorned with a scrubby moustache of so light a colour that you don't know whether it is skin or hair. Middleton calls their religion the dysenteric and says they are awfully pious and straight-laced. On Friday, I dined at Lindsay's and met King, Deuce, Bush, and the beast Henderson. Mitchie was ill in bed, so we had only Robison to entertain us. In the billiard room, I saw young Dallas. I slept there in order to go out next morning to Sichaway with Robertson, but of course the rain prevented it. At Shanghai, Jameson concluded an arrangement with James Whittall to set up a newspaper of which the profits for the first 3 years should be Whittall's, while Jameson should receive £1,000 per annum. If it succeeded, he was to receive the paper and conduct it for himself and Hallpike after the expenses of Whittall had been entirely repaid. He is a lucky fellow and will do well. I am rejoiced at his success for several reasons. So at this point, Jameson leaves the consular service and does not go back to Japan. Okay, here are the notes. All right, and that, in fact, is the end. It's the very last day of, it's the 24th of August, the last day of the Peking section of the diaries. So I can now stop the share and I can say goodbye to you until we see each other again in the next video. Thank you very much and goodbye.